It's not whether or not Daniel Jones can protect himself. It's also, can he be effective? And honestly, I don't even know if what you'd call last Sunday was Daniel Jones protecting himself. I mean, he was sacked 6 times and left the game with an ankle injury. So I don't know how much he was protecting himself. But if you're going to use that same criteria as last week about whether or not he can play, well, that to me, Moose, really just defies logic. And I hope this isn't, a huge mistake that Joe Judge is going to make here, because he's done so much right this season, building a culture for the Giants, giving them an identity. I mean, if you stack up the pros and cons to Joe Judge, it's clearly and obvious that there's a laundry list of pros. But this is now the season teetering. You still have a shot here at the playoffs. You have to get this decision right. And if he's using the same criteria that he did last week, and if Daniel Jones somehow plays in this game and he is so limited and the coaching staff does not help him with a better offensive game plan, then you're just making the same mistake 2 weeks in a row, and it could cost the Giants a trip to the playoffs.
Well, you're compounding the problem. It could be coaches speak. Let's see what the decision is come Sunday night. Now dealing with not only the hamstring, the recovery there, also now dealing with the ankle injury that he suffered second quarter of the Arizona Cardinal game. Now you have a little bit more clarity as to why they thought about making a quarterback change in the second half. You saw Colt McCoy warming up. Even after the game, when Joe Judge came out and said, well, it just bumps and bruises of playing an NFL game. Well, that wasn't the truth, what Judge had to say, and guys are going to lie. And so I'm not going to hold Judge accountable for that. You see that all across, professional sports. But yeah, it would be a similar mistake. You'd be compounding the problem. Don't roll into it and expect a different result when you have a quarterback who's hampered, who's one of his great assets is using his legs, using his athletic ability, being able to use designed runs for him, using the RPO. Don't throw him into a scenario or your offense into a scenario where you can make great use of one of his great assets as a quarterback. And that is one of Daniel Jones' great assets, is what he can do running the football. He is not Lamar Jackson. He's not Michael Vick. He's not Russell Wilson. I understand that. But what he can provide this offense is an ability to keep defenses on their heels with the threat of running. And if he can't run, and there were some times on Sunday against Arizona where there were lanes for Daniel Jones to run, and he decided not to, well, then he's a sitting duck in the pocket. Then you look at all the ills of Daniel Jones as a signal caller, not perusing the entire field, not going through his progressions. When the game speeds up, he slows down. All the things that we've talked about Daniel Jones, and also the turnovers with Daniel Jones, those come along with the territory as well. So I can't roll him out there. And it could just be gamesmanship. I think it's an organizational decision. I don't think this is a decision that Joe Judge is singularly making, even though he is the head coach of the team. So it would be an organizational decision about whether or not Daniel Jones is going to be playing on Sunday night. And as the Giants, don't be stupid. We've given you all this credit for being a smart franchise up until this point in time. The coaching staff, the preparedness of the players, Logan Ryan saying it's the most complicated defense, an ode to Patrick Graham, setting the tone, holding guys accountable with Joe Judge, adjusting the game plan based on opponent. When you look at the offensive coordinator, and now going to be Freddie Kitchens, but then Jason Garrett, Judge stepping in with the offensive line struggles, everything that went down with Mark Colombo out as offensive line coach. We've given the Giants a lot of credit. We've been the kings and queens of the moral victory parade season long. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I don't think you'll find a bigger supporter of Judge than myself. And listen, it has been a representable product all season long outside the Cardinal and 49er game. You cannot, as an organization, put a hampered Daniel Jones at maybe 65 or 70 or 75% in against the Cleveland Browns, now dealing with 2 injuries, and expect a different result. They're too smart for that. They cannot be that dumb to think that it's all of a sudden going to look differently on Sunday night against the Browns after what we just witnessed with Arizona when he was a sitting duck in the pocket.
Yeah, you got to nail the dismount here if you're Joe Judge on this season. You've got to nail the dismount in getting these decisions right. And it was clear now in hindsight, And I guess during the game, it became very clear that Daniel Jones should not have been playing in that game because it wasn't just that he was nursing the hamstring, but it also impacted his decision-making. Carl Banks, who joins us on Mondays and Fridays, thought that it got into his head that he was managing the injury, and it really led to a regression of some of the bad Daniel Jones play that we've seen through the early part of the season. You got 3 games to go here. Listen, if the Giants don't make
Maggie,
the playoffs,
not only just that, but what about, you mentioned Carl Banks, what about the great point that Carl made earlier in the week where he said Garrett, as a play caller, seemed to be calling it on the run, adjusting the game plan based on whether or not Daniel Jones was comfortable with that particular play. You can't go into an offense. You can't go into an NFL week doing that, devising a game plan right on the run as what you're witnessing there. I understand adjustments, but figuring it out there because he was limited in practice the week before, what Daniel Jones is comfortable running and what he is not comfortable running, going up against Arizona.
If you have a more veteran quarterback or someone who has maybe a wider skill set than Daniel Jones does in year 2 of his NFL career, then maybe you can do something like that. But you can't do it with this quarterback that you have right now, and the evidence was all there for us to watch over 3.5 hours against the Cardinals. But this is the thing about nailing the dismount here for Judge. If the Giants don't make the playoffs, the Giants don't make the playoffs. You know what? It would be disappointing without a doubt, considering the 4-game winning streak and how everyone in the city was riding a high and all of that. You'll still take away a lot of positives from this year. But if the Giants don't make the playoffs because of what looks like self-inflicted wounds, and by that I mean bad decision-making, mishandling the quarterback situation, that's way more unforgivable than if the Giants just get outplayed here down the stretch, right? If the Browns are going to put up 42 points, which I don't think they're going to, because I think the Giants' defense is going to be able to contain them, but if they're going to be on this tear and the Browns are going to make the playoffs here, and then you're going to play the Baltimore Ravens in the next week, and Lamar looks great again, and the only thing that stops them is a trip to the bathroom so he can be scrolling on Twitter during the game, getting an IV, maybe taking a trip to the loo, all of that, then okay, then the Giants season, then it wasn't meant to be for the playoffs this year. Everyone forgive it, move on, you turn your attention to next season. But if it's self-inflicted and it looks like a rookie head coach mismanaged this quarterback situation down the stretch, it's going to feel a lot different going into the offseason, Moose. It will.